Yo, what's
What's
up,
up,
man?
Noel?
How's it going?
It's going good. Going good. Another day in paradise.
Another day. You're out in New York?
Connecticut. Yeah,
Oh,
we
Connecticut.
we decamped,
Okay,
as you
okay.
say. Yeah, yeah.
We're out here. We're out here in Austin. I got my Jamies over here, um, pulling stuff up in the background in case we need it. This is the continuation of our live stream series. I think we had a few live streams in the past connected to our auctions. We're going to start doing these a little bit more often, more company specific. Kicking it off with the most, I think, relevant thing in today's day and age, AI and the model AI companies. Um, who will be AI's top model? I don't know. We'll find out soon. Um, just by way of introduction, I run Augment Markets, um, and we offer securities through our subsidiary Augment Capital LLC. We enable people to buy and sell shares in private companies. And Jan is the co-founder of Sacra. You want to give a 2-second spiel?
Yeah. Co-founder of Sacra. We do research on private companies, so mostly growth stage, pre-IPO startups.
And something that you'll notice is that all these companies that we're talking about today are private, and they're mostly tradable. So we'll have Adam jump in here just to say hi real quick. We'll bring him in at the end again.
Hello,
So
hello.
Adam is my co-founder. He runs our broker dealer and the capital markets. So we'll bring him at the end to talk how these companies trade, because you can't just go onto Robinhood or Yahoo Finance and look up their prices, but
Yet.
you can on Augment. So we'll see you soon, Adam.
All right. Cheers.
Yeah, and we've been partnered with Sacra for since you guys started. It was like 3 years ago, 4 years ago now.
That's right. That's right. Longtime
Um,
partners.
you can check out all their research on our site, augment.market. Check it out in the app. It's good stuff. And with that, I think we'll get started. If you all have questions and you're following on X or LinkedIn, just send us some questions in the comments, and we'll get Jan to answer them. Hand it off to you.
Sweet man. Thank you. And yes, please interrupt me. Ask questions anytime. But we'll get into it. I think just to sort of start, with all these companies, a lot of people lack kind of a good holistic understanding of the space, or want to understand it better. So, um, I wanted to start with looking at kind of the entire value chain in AI. Uh, threw a bunch of logos in here of companies that people have probably definitely heard of. NVIDIA, AMD. These are kind of the infrastructure layer of AI. So, they build chips, GPUs mostly, and then in the case of Cerebrus and Grok, different kinds of chips. And these are kind of the workhorses that help train and then serve AI through various products. Then you have the sort of the cloud providers. So mostly these public companies who basically rent out access to these chips so that other companies can use them. And then at the very top, you have all of the applications that you use that have some form of AI in them, which for the most part, they are using the APIs of the companies in the model layer. So most of the companies that we're going to talk about are in this model layer: OpenAI, Anthropic, xAI, DeepSeek, and they are the ones who are using the compute to train, and for their own products, serve those AI apps to people and to businesses. So there's a whole bunch of players in this market, not just model companies, but model companies are obviously a critical part of it. We could talk more sort of about where the value shakes out in this market, but just to sort of orient us,
We
that's
we already
how
got
that's how it
a
looks.
we got a quick question here. Could you just like talk about a few of the companies in each and like, generally what they do and how that vertical integration looks?
For sure. So the biggest company on this list, by far, in terms of kind of mind share in the last year or two, has been NVIDIA. They have a dominating lead market share in GPUs that are used for both training and inference. And so, for context, training is what you do to, build a model, and then inference is what you do when people are using it. That's how you're sort of processing responses and sending them back to the user. And so NVIDIA is by far the most important player in that layer right now, although there are some, startup competitors with different approaches. Um, and then if we look at the cloud layer, you have the big hyperscalers, who of course have all the infrastructures to do this at scale and have been able to scale up with OpenAI and Anthropic especially. But you also have other players who are private. CoreWeave filed S1 to go public, but you have others like Lambda Labs. Crusoe is not on this list, but Crusoe Energy. And you have others as well who are capitalizing on the incredible demand for GPUs. And a lot of them have exclusive relationships with NVIDIA that get them those GPUs to rent out, mostly to other startups, but also to Microsoft, which is an indication of a bit of the tangled web here. And then if you go to the app layer, so there's been obviously a lot of generative AI app companies over the last year or two, and a lot of them are hitting significant scale. So for example, Cursor off that list and Cursor and Glean are both above 100 million ARR. Harvey is getting close. And these companies are basically, Cursor is for coding. Glean is like enterprise search. Harvey is legal work. And so they're essentially applying LLMs to make, things that were manual or time consuming before much more efficient and smarter and easier to do. So that's kind of a good overview. And then, Navan, Intercom, Notion, these are kind of like companies that are traditional SaaS businesses that are going hard adding AI features.
I know you went deep in Glean recently. Could you just explain like how Glean is different from because there's been Google put out a product where you can search out your entire workspace, and that's a very old product. I don't know where it is today, and a bunch of people have tried to build enterprise search before and failed miserably. Why is Glean succeeding, and does it have to do with LLMs kind of taking off at the same time that they were kind of like hitting their stride?
Yeah, Glean's a great one. Very interesting company. The CEO, formerly of Rubrik, which Noel knows, was at Google in the early 2000s when they tried to launch.
He was my boss for 3 years, so
Nice.
I know him very well.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, so he was at Google when they tried to do this originally in the early 2000s, before ads-based search became the clear business model, and it became like a $200 million a year business, but for Google that was nothing. And yeah, like you said, a lot of companies, it's been a graveyard of startup ideas for like 2 decades. But Glean started out in like 2019, really doing natural language processing, so like a pre-LLM form of AI over documents, over files, apps, to try and basically do this correctly. But growth really took off with sort of transformer model architecture of GPT, and especially GPT 3 to 4, which is where per Glean, like it really, the ability for the model to ingest a large amount of context across different apps and files and turn it into useful information really took off. And so it's definitely one of these businesses that, and you see this actually quite a bit in the ones that are really successful right now, that they were working on AI or working on their product idea before AI, and LLMs just really accelerated it. So yeah, definitely a good example of that. Sweet. Let me kick off then sort of the overview here with OpenAI. So obviously this is a company that most people have heard of in the space, founded 2015. as a nonprofit, and they were basically working on AI as a research lab, competing mostly with Google's DeepMind, and they launched a demo of their most recent kind of text-based model, and they called it ChatGPT. Launched it in November 2022, and yeah, after hitting 100 million monthly users in 2 months, basically the fastest growing consumer app ever, and still, ChatGPT basically synonymous with AI for the vast majority of consumers, despite how much time you might spend in Claude or Grok. This is pretty much what AI means to most people, is using ChatGPT. And yeah, huge company, obviously, valued at over 150 billion. We estimated about 4 billion ARR last year around fall, and we think probably accelerated past 5 by this point. So yeah, growing really fast. One of the key things to understand about OpenAI is that they are primarily, primary source of revenue is ChatGPT, which, if you subscribe to $20 a month up to $200 a month, they've got plans in the works for $2,000 a month ChatGPT subscription and $20,000 a month. So this is really the cash cow of business. They have an API that various companies have used, Klarna, Canva, Morgan Stanley, and incorporated GPT-3, GPT-4 into their products. And so that also generates revenue, but they are primarily a consumer and business chatbot product in terms of the revenue model. And we could talk more. I think one of the things be good to get into more is the pricing and the trends in pricing, especially with DeepSeek, which has been a disruptor there. Cool. Oh, we got a question. Let me just quickly answer the question about for profit. Yeah, there's a lot of I'm not super qualified legally to speak on the merits of the case that's currently ongoing, but yeah, there's a lawsuit about their transition to a for-profit, which is contentious because of the fact that they raised a lot of money on the premise of being a nonprofit, and are now changing to a for-profit company. Partially, I think, because they started the company with no concept that this would become the fastest growing consumer app business of all time. So I think it was started with very different intentions and ideas of what it would be, and things rapidly changed sort of on the ground. But yeah, hard to say what the outcome of all that will be. Cool. All right, so the next kind of, I would say, biggest player here at the moment in terms of privates is Anthropic. So the founders of Anthropic were former senior employees at OpenAI. They left, sort of divergence of views on how to build build AI, and they're also growing very fast. So we estimated them roughly around 1 billion ARR by the end of 2024. There's recent estimates that they are at 1.2 as of February. So accelerating slightly. There's been some new developments with their models, with their newest model and their emphasis on coding. That's been doing very well on the business side, which is reflected in the completely flipped revenue mix from OpenAI. So where OpenAI is primarily generating revenue from ChatGPT, Anthropic is primarily generating revenue from their API. Companies pay them to access the API, put it in their product, and the sort of two biggest use cases are coding is the first one, and then customer support on the other hand. Cool. xAI. So this is the latest Elon Musk family of companies product, founded about 2 years ago. The mission was to build a truthier AI chatbot, and on the one hand, there's kind of this angle of xAI is non-biased and is non-woke, is how it's been positioned. That's kind of the leading edge angle on the company. On the other hand, there's also a massive sort of investment in compute going on that has sort of instantly put them in the same conversation as OpenAI and Anthropic because of their scale and their ability to access capital, which a lot of is predicated on Elon Musk and his companies. And there's also an interesting data flywheel angle there where because it's, essentially part of Twitter, they have access to this live real-time stream of news and events and conversations that could be very valuable for them in terms of training data, because it's one of these proprietary sources of data that no one else can actually access. And then DeepSeek. DeepSeek has been in the news a lot as of roughly a month or two ago, when they launched a model that they claimed cost a fraction of the cost to train versus their competitors, and also that those models were shown in benchmarks to perform roughly at parity with some of the big closed source models that we have from OpenAI. So yeah, it's a big deal. There's a big sort of nation state competition component. There's also a big component of commoditization, and if other companies are able to train models much more cheaply than OpenAI, Anthropic, xAI, does that reduce the moat that you have as a model company? And it's it definitely had impact on pricing. We've seen that with OpenAI, who basically reduced their prices on almost all their models towards the tail end of last year, and we think saw a dip in API revenue as a result. But yeah, there's a the next level is kind of are these companies really competing as pure model companies anymore? Not really. So we'll talk about that some more. Cool. So those are kind of the four players. Just to lay out the landscape a little bit. From here on, we'll go into sort of competition, different angles of different players. But yeah, Noel, if you have any questions as we sort of hit this halfway point, happy to take any.
Yeah. Do you want to? Does it make sense for you to go through this one, and then I can ask some questions that have been coming in?
Yeah, sweet. So, yeah, competition-wise, I mean, if you go back 2 years, OpenAI was pretty much the undisputed king of AI, and things have shifted, significantly since then. They're still sort of the biggest by revenue by some margin, but one of the major things we're seeing is the adoption of Anthropic in B2B use cases, especially via API, has been really big. So even though there's a consumer advantage that is, I mean, if you spend any time on Twitter, this might shock you, but ChatGPT is completely, no one in the real world has heard of Claude or Perplexity or any of these companies. So that's really a key dynamic, is Claude gaining traction. And then you are also seeing some competitive dynamics from the app layer companies, like you mentioned, Glean, and then Cursor, and GitHub Copilot and Perplexity, where there are competitive dynamics emerging with them. OpenAI told its own investors not to invest in Glean or Perplexity. So you're seeing some of that as well.
For a long time, people have been trying to build these coding assistants, different languages, like auto-generating code. I mean, when I was doing my job search, when I was at Google in 2014, I ended up landing at Rubrik. One of the companies was like at the forefront of doing this code-generated stuff. They could do one language. It took them 5 years to build it, and I think they just couldn't get enough traction. And then now you have Glean that hit 100 mil ARR in how long? Like five years?
Yeah.
5-ish years. And then you had Cursor that I think there's that chart of like, how quickly startups were getting to 100 mil ARR. And like all of the recent ones were hitting it like super quick. How do you have you seen this like LLM stuff? Or are there any statistics that like show how quickly or how much the LLMs have accelerated the application level companies?
Yeah, I do think that I do think Stripe actually published some data on that. I don't have it offhand, but the long and short of it is that across even the not biggest names, um, they're all growing revenue much faster than sort of SaaS cloud businesses did in the past. And I mean, part of it is just like being able to ship compelling products that use these new models very quickly, which um, people want access to these models and they want to use them in different ways. And these companies, they called them, derisively GPT wrappers a few years ago. That was uh, a big thing to call a company just a GPT wrapper. But I think the sort of proof is in the revenue that a lot of people want to make use of models, and these application layer companies give them a way to do so. And so, the product market fit has been insane.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, every company is a wrapper of something.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even some like hardware companies are wrappers of smaller or like hardware companies that build the base of these things. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't really find the wrapper thing super compelling unless there's or the wrapper argument against these companies super compelling. If they really
I
have a
think there
moat,
are.
like it's like Perplexity, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, go ahead.
No, exactly right. I think like Perplexity is a good example where, they have built a product experience around multiple AI models, and that product experience is what's the compelling part of it. Same with Glean. I mean, the amount of time that they spent building the integrations into different enterprise B2B SaaS products and ERPs is kind of the key thing. And similarly with Cursor, you could build a IDE and attach ChatGPT to it, but that is not a great experience versus where you've put a ton of effort into sort of the um, various little bits and pieces of how it works together. So yeah.
Um, cool. So I mean, in the spirit of this uh, subject, I put your slides up until this slide into all four models and asked it to spit out some questions. So let's start with, okay, so this is ChatGPT. This is 4.5.
Okay.
Um,
Nice.
question number one is, I think this might be a little bit too generic of a question because it asked me to give me general public questions, but what's the practical difference between ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, and DeepSeek? And I'll kind of add my like own flavor to that as well. A lot of these companies have like their differentiation is their data because you got to train the model on the data. Is there different like where does the most of the differentiation happen? And I know xAI probably has proprietary data on the okay, that's interesting. XA has probably some proprietary data on the X front, like being able to crawl X. And I forgot which company has like API access to Reddit, and I think Reddit had this big thing where they were shutting down API access um, because it was a massive drain on their servers. What is the biggest differentiator between all these models?
Yeah. So there is more differentiation emerging. I think part of it is like a vibes based evaluation where, you know, uh, people felt for a long time that Claude was kind of the most conversational, and GPT, Chat GPT, especially with like four, and then with the reasoning models they've released are more like strong reasoners, really good at computation. Um, Claude is sort of the state of the art for coding tasks, so it's generally what developers will use for generating code. Um, Grok, like you said, has the Twitter integration. So I think if you need real-time access to tweets or live breaking information, I think that's really where Grok has sort of um, made its clearest mark. And like if I need to know, something that's happening right now, I'll typically ask Grok instead of ChatGPT. Although there is blending happening, so for a while, Perplexity was like your only option for finding, doing search over the web with LLMs, and now ChatGPT has a competitive search, embedded in ChatGPT, and Grok has the same thing. So there is, merging happening. And like you said, you're using GPT 4.5, which is probably OpenAI's most Claude-like model at this point. So yeah, there's a lot of blending, but there is still some sort of personality differences and then product differences, which is sort of the key thing. So all of these companies are competing on the basis of being product companies now,
Yeah.
versus pure model companies. And this is really clear with ChatGPT. If you look at like the pro membership that gets you access to, these deep research reports, gets you access to very long responses from their, sort of best reasoning model at the moment, which are really useful for certain types of use cases. Whereas with Claude, you can get access to a developer tool in your command line that is basically an autonomous coder, using their most recent model. DeepSeek doesn't really have anything like that in broad distribution. Right now, they mostly have the model, and then Grok is sort of the unfiltered, slightly more racy AI. So yeah. Anyway,
DeepSeek like made the news recently because they supposedly trained their model. I think they said it was like $6 million. And how much does it cost to train a model, and how are the models different in their actual training? Because I think DeepSeek also, I forgot what the name of the training method was. I think it was like diffusion or something, where they were pulling data from another model, and piggybacking on that. Yeah, how much does it cost to train these different things?
yeah. So Dario, the CEO of Anthropic, wrote a response when DeepSeek came out where he talked about the training costs, and this kind of information is not, frequently shared. So it was a valuable read, and he basically said it cost 10 million to train Claude 3.5 Sonnet, which was their sort of July 2024 model. So this confused a lot of people. DeepSeek claimed to be doing it so much cheaper. But there's a bunch of sort of ambiguity and sort of things left out of the analysis, that we don't really exactly know how much it cost to, from the ground up, develop DeepSeek. But we know that it was cheaper because there were certain engineering discoveries or innovations that they used in training it that allowed them to do it more cheaply, which they had to because of export restrictions on NVIDIA chips. But is it like a DeepSeek was 6 million versus Anthropic or OpenAI is 5 billion? It's not comparing apples to apples. So it's hard to say exactly, but there are definitely efficiencies that they discovered.
Cool. I think I'll just let you continue, and I'll probably just pop in and ask some more questions.
Sweet. All right, cool. Yeah. So to go back to OpenAI, one of the big sort of dynamics about OpenAI has been their partnership with Microsoft. So Microsoft invested over 13 billion into OpenAI early on, starting from early on, and securing these exclusive rights to serve, GPT-4 inside Microsoft Copilot and their other apps, and also giving OpenAI, favorable terms on buying compute, which they needed to be able to serve this massively, quickly ramping user base. So as part of that, Microsoft gets a pretty large slice of revenue, but it's ultimately worth it. OpenAI needs these kinds of resources to build frontier models, and in return, Microsoft gets basically a call option on OpenAI. And so, yeah, it's definitely a trend. We're seeing a lot of these cloud partnerships. You have another one with Amazon and Anthropic that we'll talk about later. Always curious about Perplexity. Question from the chat. If Perplexity can find the best result for me from all the LLMs on the web, why would I use ChatGPT, Grok, DeepSeek myself? A big chunk of the chat and even search revenue will go to Perplexity eventually. Yeah, I think, well, it's interesting because I think for me, the main thing is Perplexity is, it's potentially an extra subscription if you are paying for it. And if you're not, if most people aren't paying for it, then I'm not sure the sustainability of the revenue. I do think it was a really good use case a few years ago that has become sort of gradually more commoditized by not just ChatGPT, but Grok, but also Google itself. So I think that's the challenge is for them to continue making the product really compelling that people want to pay for it when search is gradually being kind of taken over by other companies. Google search overviews are there now every time you Google something, and so I think that's kind of one of the big questions with them. I think if there's anything else. Yeah, they're certainly the biggest kind of like model, open model router company in that they will serve you any kind of model that you want to use, and you can do search and chat. So I think it's really compelling. I think, clearly they're focused really hard on sort of building the brand, extending the brand to a mass consumer scale, which they haven't really accomplished yet. ChatGPT is still sort of so dominant there, but we'll see. Actually, relevant to this slide, which is about OpenAI's kind of expansion into other products. So there's been many stories about what they're working on. There was an AI device they were building with Jony Ive. There was a announcement that they were working on a web browser. They have now the Sora video generator. They have a computer use agent that will take control of a AWS little browser window and basically do whatever you tell it to do. And they're working on a bunch of other products. So the kind of takeaway from all this activity is that OpenAI is a model company that launched a demo that became a massively successful product, but they don't see that as the end game. Their projections for future revenue in coming years basically have them generating an increasingly large share of revenue from other products that don't yet exist. And in the recent kind of months, that has shifted a lot towards agents. So they're sort of positioning more around agents being that source of revenue. But the web browser here, they reportedly were working on a web browser. Perplexity is now working on a web browser as well. And you're seeing a lot of sort of convergence between these two companies on product terms as everyone kind of looks for like what the big AI interface will be, because presumably, they think it's not actually chat.
Before you hop in
Yeah.
there, I have a question about OpenAI. This was coming out of Grok, and I haven't used Grok a ton in the past, but it's got a very interesting, let's just say, interesting style. So I asked it to ask some questions on your presentation. One of the questions was, why is OpenAI making so much money while losing cash like it's monopoly money? And here's the answer, and I'll read you out this answer, and you tell me if you want to add any color to it. It's already kind of colorful. It says, OpenAI is living the rock star life, raking in $4 billion a year, 75% from ChatGPT subscriptions, 25% from API nerds, but they're burning $340 million in cash like it's a bonfire at a tech bro beach party. Why? They're pouring it into monster compute power via Azure and hiring 1,000 plus brainiacs in 9 months. It's like buying a fleet of Lambos before you've paid off your student loans. high risk, high reward, baby. Any more color you want to add to that, Jan?
I don't know if I can add anything as colorful as that. Yeah, but yeah, it's funny. Grok obviously maybe a little biased, but no, I think it's very real, and I think they've done a lot of the leading work on this space in general that has enabled other companies like DeepSeek um, to do what they did much more cheaply, because everyone is training on model outputs. So, in a way, they shouldered a lot of the cost. Their sort of vision is that uh, what starts to happen is that revenue begins to, I think revenue growth, they say, has already eclipsed kind of the losses um, in a way that's trending favorably. But the the most clear thesis I can see is that basically the next stages of this company and this industry hinges not on continuing to scale training to the extent that you're going to see losses scale similarly. It's more about building the products that are going to use AI and building agents, which will be basically a coordination problem and a tool,
Yep.
Tool use problem, which is not going to add, exponentially to losses in the same way that, going from GPT-2 to 3 to 4 did.
Kind of along those lines, and I think partially related to one of the things you just touched on is, why is everyone partnering with big cloud dudes like Microsoft and Amazon? This is also from Grok, obviously. This is their answer. I'll do the same thing if you want to add more color.
Sure.
It's like the prom. Everyone needs a date with deep pockets. OpenAI's got Microsoft tossing $13 billion their way for Azure Compute in a 20% revenue slice, while Anthropic's slow dancing with Amazon for $8 billion and a supercomputer called Project Rainer. I don't know what that is. Why? These AI nerds need insane computing power to train their models, and the cloud kings need AI to stay cool. It's a match made in heaven, or a corporate rom-com, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, that's roughly correct. I mean, xAI I don't have to do anything. This is great. You can just run it without me. But yeah, xAI obviously had the benefit of, investors who are willing to, given Elon's previous successes, pretty much, bankroll, this insanely large training run that they're doing, and that the infrastructure they're building. But yeah, I mean, that's what it basically is you need compute. If you're going to train and also serve models to millions of people, you need a lot of money.
Yeah. I'll let you keep going. I probably have 5 more questions that have come in. And maybe just do this for another 2 to 5 minutes, and then we can just get to the questions.
Great. Cool. Yeah. So Anthropic, we've talked about a bit. They have become sort of state of the art for what is now the biggest sort of generative AI use case in B2B in enterprise, which is coding. And also, they're pretty strong in support chatbots, which is the number 2. So in terms of sort of money being spent to use AI in these use cases. If you use coding tools like Cursor or any of the new style ones like Bolt.new, Lovable, Vercel's V0, most of these, not coincidentally, only came about after the launch of Claude's 3.5 Sonnet model last July. Cursor existed previously, but this is when they all sort of started to take off. The kind of most logical hypothesis I've seen is that Claude is doing a lot of work in the so-called post-training with code, like coding examples, and building their model very specifically to be the best at code. And so far, despite a lot of other model companies going after this, they still have a advantage here. Where they've been much less effective is consumer. So I already showed the graph of ChatGPT's sort of dominance here. Claude has done some advertising campaigns in major cities, but really to very little avail. It's not much of a consumer product. I think we're estimating roughly 180 150, 180 million ARR from chat, which is barely above a Glean or a Cursor. But there is sort of interesting movement on this front. There was this discussion like a year ago that Amazon was going to release Claude inside Alexa, and it was sort of delayed for a while, but now we're hearing that it's rolling out in the next few weeks. So you will have access to Claude on most Alexa models, and it's going to be free for all Prime subscribers, of which there are like 200 million. So 200 million Prime subscribers. There is about 70 million who actually have an Alexa right now. But that obviously gets them access to a much larger user base than they currently have. So yeah, it could be very interesting for mindshare and also for sort of Anthropic's ability to get this kind of consumer usage training data back into their system, the way that ChatGPT and Grok do today. And then xAI, yeah. So we've talked a bit about this. Maybe we can get Grok's input on it, but it's really remarkable how quickly they sort of emerged and came to roughly parity with like OpenAI and Anthropic's models, at least in terms of general purpose and benchmarks. And a lot of that is capital. They obviously also were able to hire a really great team. A lot of this is the sort of effect of being in the Elon Musk family of companies. But the most recent model is competitive with sort of the most recent models from OpenAI and Anthropic in a general purpose way. So yeah, they have rapidly sort of closed the gap. The main distinction at this point is that its API business is still pretty nascent. I don't think a lot of businesses are using Grok API for much more individual developers. And then the primary interface is still, it's primarily chat, although they've added some features like their own kind of deep research or deep think product that lets you do more reasoning. Obviously, search, they have image generation. So yeah, definitely very fast ramp in terms of capabilities and one to watch. And then, yeah, DeepSeek, we sort of talked about, but the main upshot is that DeepSeek did affect pricing from what it looks like. I mean, OpenAI reduced prices across most of their API models late last year. So the only company I think that didn't reduce prices was Anthropic. And we're also seeing the engineering innovations that I mentioned being incorporated. So OpenAI wrote a report on GPT 4.5 in which they more or less said that they had incorporated some of the training techniques that DeepSeek used into the training of GPT 4.5. So, I think we are seeing sort of the techniques diffusing across the industry. But again, with no real consumery product, at least in terms of the United States usage, it doesn't seem like a super large direct product company competitor to OpenAI, Anthropic, and xAI. But yeah, I think in China, there's a lot of companies incorporating DeepSeek, especially R1, the most recent model, into their products. So yeah, I think that is all the prepared slides. So we got some questions here. Yeah, I can
right.
check on this
Let's
AI
do it this way.
agents one. Nice.
Let's get rid of your screen share there. I have one question, and then we can go through some of the questions in there.
Okay, cool.
What's your take on the future of AI agents? Do you see them getting to a point where they can manage complex projects completely on their own? And does any company currently have an advantage with AI agent development? And where do they fit in the stack? Do you think the foundational AI models are gonna? Oh, nice. There you go. I'm just expanding on this. Do you think the foundational models are going to build agents themselves, or there's going to be some sort of marketplace for agents, or is it vertically integrated? Where's that going to go?
Yeah. So we've seen a lot of companies like LangChain and Crew AI, Llama Llama Index. I can't remember the exact name, but a lot of open source frameworks for kind of building, duct taping together, AI agents, quote unquote agents that are basically API calls to LLMs to try and get them to coordinate to do different projects. And I mean, generally, those haven't had the kind of impact that you would, think, you know, AI agents that can do things for you would have. Um, and I think the problem mainly has been the foundational models haven't had the sort of correct training set up to actually fulfill, sort of long range requests and complete projects end to end. And so I think, about 6 months ago, it would have been right to say that they didn't have this capability, and maybe they won't. But in the last few months, the progress has been kind of insane. I mean, with ChatGPT putting out deep research, which had been done before, but this was probably the most mature implementation. There's definitely uh, very strong progress towards like truly autonomous AI agents that can put together a plan, incorporate various tools and then execute on it. You're seeing the same thing with code, with Claude Code as they call it, which behaves in your command line like an
Yeah.
autonomous coding agent. So I mean, in terms of will they get there, I think like starting from these things can barely produce English in 2022 to now in 2025. Like I barely code, and I can like build complex stuff in my
Yeah.
in my command line with Claude. It's like it's clear that they will get there to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, the
I think the
foundation
lines
model
get
companies
messy
are.
between the lines are getting messy between the different layers. I think, and yeah, as for the coding part, like I mean, at Augment, it's like a massive productivity hack if you're using this stuff properly. All right, we'll do one more question. Liz, you want to say something?
I meant to respond to your other point, which is that we are now seeing, like as I said, OpenAI, Anthropic, we are seeing the model companies building this stuff because I think they realize that that building just a model is not defensible. They have to build these kinds of products. And so whereas before they were happy to sort of seed that to the application layer, I think that they're definitely betting on that as their sort of future revenue growth.
Yep. All right, the last question for you. OpenAI recently announced that GPT-4.5 is not a frontier model. And in some benchmarks, it actually performed worse than other models like Grok 3. It suggests that the gap between AI versions is narrowing as the improvements in performance aren't as significant. Sam Altman also mentioned that they're facing GPU shortages, and some users claim that GPT-4.5 is more emotionally intelligent. Given all these factors, do you think that the focus has shifted from raw performance to other aspects like emotional intelligence or efficiency, or in the case of Grok, humor?
Definitely over the last like 6 months, that would be the trend. There was a lot of talk about how sort of pre-training, which is what was taking up all that capital, was kind of hitting a wall. And as a result, we've seen the last few iterations of the models have not been the same kind of jump in terms of like pure compute and intelligence. So we are seeing differentiation like GPT 4.5, which is a more conversational, kind of less, robotic voice, which makes sense. They need to have like sort of more conversational Claude-like model in their arsenal if they want to sort of compete on every angle. But then again, I think a lot of it goes to like the focus has shifted to making models that can take action, and so that's
Yep.
actually part of the training regimen. And then the other part of it, I would say, is probably that you know the current regime has sort of slowed down in terms of scaling intelligence, but the space is pretty young, so there will probably be new methods of training that are discovered, and that can sort of get us another S curve going.
Yep. All right, Jan. Well, it's been a pleasure to host you.
And a pleasure to be here.
Good stuff. And until next time, we'll probably shooting to do these at least once a month. Maybe goal by end of 2025 is once a week. We'll see.
Nice.
There's a lot of content recently. Things are really picking up, both on like the tech front generally, and the market side, which we're seeing of. So until next time, man.
I'm amped. All right. Thanks, Noel.
All right. Peace. All right. We're going to bring on Adam here. 3, 2, 1.
Hello.
All right. Adam runs capital markets for Augment, specifically Augment Capital, our broker-dealer. All 4 of these companies that we talked about are AI companies. We also were talking about CoreWeave and Glean. Also, private AI companies, different parts of the stack. What is the market looking like for these things nowadays?
Well, it's definitely centralized around the kind of the blue chip names. On the foundational model side, OpenAI and Anthropic, we've seen demand kind of fall off for some of the third and fourth like competitor in the space. Even on the like the Mistrals and the open source models, we've seen demand fall off a bit, but it's one that we're keeping an eye on. And just so people understand, OpenAI is is still the elephant in the room. It's 260 billion pre-money. They're raising 40 million plus in their current raise right now. And then you have Anthropic, the next. Actually, xAI just took the lead on valuation at 75 billion, and then Anthropic just over 60 billion. And then you've got the Mistrals and the Coheres that are in this 10 billion and below range. So on the foundational side, and then Perplexity on search, there's reporting about them raising the next round at 15 billion, and we're seeing a lot of demand around Perplexity. I think they have an interesting differentiated approach, and so and definitely the hyperscalers. CoreWeave has been an active name. IPO, their S1 filed recently, so the IPO is coming, and Glean is another one that the market's been chasing. Around that $6 billion valuation right now, I guess. So,
and a lot of these big companies, and historically, particularly Elon companies, are very protective of their cap tables for a bunch of reasons. If they do trade, how do they trade? Like, how do you get on the cap table of these things, or can you get access through other types of vehicles?
Yeah, I think talking to groups like Augment that are well connected in the market, and but also making sure you're getting, I think, good access with, I think, fees and pricing that makes sense. Specifically on OpenAI, for example, their last 2 raises have been convertibles, and so just caution for people that are investing on a price basis for OpenAI, because they haven't. These are convertibles, their last 2 primaries, and there's a lot of dilution. So I think it's just important talking to people that are active in the market and that and they kind of know what's going on. So,
any parting words on the capital market side? Some very exciting stuff happening in 2025. We're kicking it off pretty strong.
Yeah. I don't know. There's I think everyone's waiting to see what's going to happen on the foundational side with the pricing power, and then DeepSeek is interesting, and then there's the open source models like Mistral. I think seeing what happens to the pricing power with these, and the agents. I think Perplexity is making a play on the agent side, and so I'm really curious seeing if Perplexity can continue to gain market share there, and how they're going to be able to compete on the consumer side against OpenAI. So I think it's
all
just
right.
watch in real time.
Cool. Yeah. And, these markets are moving every day.
And we've got IPOs coming. So Discord announced recently that they're contemplating an IPO soon. CoreWeave is coming soon, and that's been an institutional name. Jane Street came in and took a big position in the secondary market. So I think we're curious to see how that performs, and we'll see.
All right. Stay tuned. Good stuff. Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Adam. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.